that way everybody who joins us as participants after will be, and then we're going to go live on Facebook. I don't know if I told you this, Sunny, that that we, because it's so different from what we had done in the last virtual retreat, it was a little bit awkward because people were like, why do I have to register? I don't get it. So we're going to go live only, you know, all that kind of gets, you know, I mean, this is your livelihood. Thank God. Thank God, you know. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so as we are getting started here, this, if you guys don't know Sunny Dawn Johnston already, it's time. It's definitely time. It's past time. You're here for a reason. So thank you so much for being here. We are going to learn a little bit about our angels and really asking our guides for the help and support that we need. And Sunny is the most amazing person in the whole wide world to tell us all about this. So let me read her fantastic bio here. Sunny Dawn Johnston is an acclaimed psychic medium, change maker, informational thought leader, and spiritual business mentor. She's a weekly columnist for Women's World magazine and the author of, get this guys, 21 books, including her flagship bestsellers, Invoking the Archangels and Love Never Ends, which have become the cornerstones of many of her keynote topics, including subjects such as intuition, mediumship, and the angelic realm. And Bagheera is all about it, just so you know. she is loving it. Through her courses, private sessions, and live events, Sunny has grown and cultivated a diverse global community, which is exactly why I invited her to be here today. Whether in person or online, her strong mentorship encourages thousands of students to connect with their heart and the core of their being, and guides them to experience life in a higher vibrational, multi-dimensional way. Sunny is involved with several charitable organizations, far too many to mention here, but the one that I am the most familiar with is her Sunny, tell me, remind me the name of it again.
Sunlight Alliance.
That's right, Sunlight Alliance. Thank you so much. So without further ado, let's hear from Sunny Dawn Johnston.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, everyone. Happy to be here. So I'm talking about angels and connecting with the angelic realm. And in order really to start that journey and take you on a journey, I think we've got to go back many years, like many years now. So almost 38 years ago, I had gone to bed one night, as you know, kids do. I was 13 years old. And I had been talking to my mom about the struggles that I was having, the conflicts I was having with friends, which was the lack of, the challenges, and just being a 13-year-old girl, you know, was, I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't go back to that time if you paid me $10 million, right? Like, no, thank you. So anyway, I'd gone to bed one night, like any other night. And I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning. I looked at my clock and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I rolled over. And as I rolled over, I saw this beautiful, colorful, winged being above my bed. And it didn't scare me. I didn't jump out of bed and freak out. It literally almost just felt like it enveloped me. And as I rolled over and I saw this, I felt like this, like it was like I was home, like it was safe. And as I sat in that space for however long that was, I really just had the awareness that I didn't even know what it was. I just had the awareness that I felt at peace. I felt relaxed. I didn't feel worried or fearful or anything. And so I just was so at ease. I literally just rolled over and went back to sleep. And the next morning when I woke up, 6 o'clock, I woke up and my alarm went off. Then my head started kicking in. Then I'm like, oh my God, what the hell was that? And I started freaking out like, okay, I know it wasn't a dream. I know it was real. I can still see it to this day right now as I tell the story. And so then I jumped out of bed and then I ran downstairs and I told my mom what had happened. And she said to me, well, Sonny, that's your guardian angel. And I said, I'll have one of those. And she says, well, of course you do. Everybody has a guardian angel. And I said, I don't have one. And she goes, well, why wouldn't you have one? I said, because if I had one, then I wouldn't have the experiences I have. Like everybody would be nice and life would be easy. And, I mean, remember, I'm 13. Okay. So how hard could it have been really? But, and she said, well, Sonny, everybody has a guardian angel. And so do you. And she said, I went into your bedroom last night at 11 o'clock after you'd gone to sleep. And I prayed over you. And I asked God and the angels to protect you and to keep you safe. And I said, you why? Well, I've been concerned about your mental and emotional state, which she had reason to be. And I've never done that before, but last night I did. And what I realized as she said that was that I had awakened to the manifestation of my mother's prayer. And that taught me a lot of things. The first thing it taught me was that even if you don't believe in something, it can still exist, right? I didn't have a belief in, I wasn't raised with religion specifically, although I was raised in a very dominant religious city-state environment, being raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I wasn't raised in religion. My parents had left the Mormon church when they were both 17. And so they weren't exposing me to that, but I was surrounded by it in all ways, always. And I didn't have a belief in angels. I kind of thought angels were like figurines that were on people's mantles and people brought them out and hung them on Christmas trees. And that was pretty much my understanding of angels. And yet I'd had this experience and I wouldn't have known what to call it or how to name it, but I absolutely knew for sure that it was real. I knew that. I could feel it in my body. It was overwhelmingly clear that something existed beyond this realm that we're in. And so that experience sent me on a path of what I like to think of as curiosity. It opened the door to possibility. And even though even after my mom told me, even though I had the experience, it wasn't like, I'm like, oh, okay, I have guardian angel. Like I really still didn't really believe it. But I did believe something. I just didn't know what it was. So it put me on this path of curiosity, and it made me curious. And I was always one of those kids. I don't know if any of you guys were like this, but I was one of those kids that I always had questions about everything always. And I would always ask questions like in school, how the teachers get into something. I'd ask, my hand would be up before she was getting it. And she's like, Sonny, I'm getting there. Could you just let me get there? Right. Like this was a constant in my life. And so in this situation too, I had tons of questions. And the great thing that was different about this than going to school, which sucked for me, was that when I would ask a question or I would have that curiosity, I would get the guidance. I would get the support. I would get the direction. I would feel acknowledged, validated, instead of punished and put in the corner, right? And so I began to, at that very young age, not knowing what I was doing, I began to open myself up to the possibility that there might be something more than just what I am seeing and experiencing here in my 3D human experience. And so that started me on this journey of connecting with the angelic realm. And for any of you that are watching, if you're not already connected to the angels consciously, it doesn't mean you're not connected to the angels. It just means consciously, we're just not aware. And I like to share some of the background because I think a lot of us have done this in our lives. We've had experiences that were really awesome, like amazing. And then what I did was I got curious. I asked lots of questions and I kind of got into it. And then I focused on life again. I started getting back to, kind of disconnecting from that really cool vibe that I was experiencing. And I started worrying about what people thought. And I started focusing on how I could be like everyone else. And I started realizing how not like everyone else I was. And that caused this experience that happened for me. And I bet it's happened for many of you, that I did for 15 years. And the experience was this, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And then this close the door and ignore and deny. And just what my goal in life at that age, I just want to be normal, whatever that is. Normal. Just let me be normal. Why can't I be normal? Right. And then I'd have these crazy experiences that anybody now in this day and age where we all are in this community, at least, would be like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. I wish I could have that. But back then that was not the thing. I just wanted to be what everybody else was doing, like, go to school and have friends and be popular and have a boyfriend and like all the things. And I wasn't any of the things. And so that journey and connecting with the angels, it helped me to open up to, yes, the curiosity, but also what happened is because, at least in Salt Lake City, Utah, at that time, this was in the early 80s, there were no books. Like even at the county library, there was an occult section that had astrology, numerology, runes, and tarot. And it was called the occult section. There was no other books about anything to do with spirituality, especially in a Mormon dominated state. And so I wanted to learn about my experience. I wanted to see if I could find other people that were having experiences like me. And so I would go to the library and I would look and the bookstores. And nope, nothing. And so I didn't know what to do. So this is what I did. I just started saying, whoever you are, could you come back? And I would really like to feel that again. Like that feeling I'm feeling. I'd like to feel that again. Could you just come back and could you help me understand how you're getting here? That's the kind of conversations I would have. And I really was coming from a very innocent and curious place of, okay, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you're coming from. I don't really understand any of this, but I know what I know. So could you just come back and like, let me just make sure it was real. And then could you teach me about why you're coming and what you're doing and what this experience is about? And so I started doing that because I didn't know what else to do. And I figured, well, if they came once, maybe they'll come back again. And they did. And I started having experiences where it felt as though I was being taught in a class, but I was the only student and they were the teachers. And the information was being, the best word I can describe is the information was being impressioned into me. So I would just have this feeling, knowing sense that when Archangel Michael showed up, the energy of him, the vibration of him, the color that we resonate here in the physical world with, it would all just be impressioned upon me. And then And then I wouldn't have any experiences for a while. It was almost like it's okay, now work with this energy, get to know this energy. And then I'd be like, okay, I got this, I think. Okay. And then Raphael would appear, and then I would have this experience, and I would feel these different things and experience. And so I literally felt like I was in a class, but I would never have told anybody because it was crazy, right? In the realm that I was in. And so I think this is very similar to what a lot of us have happen when we first start having our spiritual awakening, whatever that is, however that opens up for you, whatever it looks like. And for me, I had this really cool, like I was having all these cool experiences. And then, like I say, I awakened and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so not normal. It's not what I want to do. And so I just pushed it away. I ignored it. I denied it. I pretended it wasn't real. And even would, when I had experiences, even would literally kind of like turn my back, like shut down, disconnect. And that went on for several months. And then I was with a friend of mine because I hadn't told anybody yet, which was a smart thing to do, to not tell people. And I was with a friend and I saw her grandfather who had passed next to her. And I hadn't had that experience before. And I knew it was her grandfather because I knew her grandfather, and he had just died like a week or maybe 2 weeks before. And she wasn't particularly close to him or anything. So it was kind of odd that he was there, but okay. And so I said, your grandpa's right next to you right now. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, he's like right there. Like, like I have these angels that come to me, and they just like show up, and I see them and I feel them, and they talk to me, and they give me messages and things like that. I'm like, your grandfather's right here. And it's like the same thing. Freaked her the shit out. Like that was okay, not okay. She told her family, who told my family, who then told the people at school, who then all of a sudden Sunny, who didn't really have any friends anyway, now had no friends at all, because now I was the crazy girl that lived in the crazy house on the corner. And so that taught me something. And it was a lesson actually that I carried for a very long time in my life. And that was, it's not safe to be who you are. And it's not safe to share who you are if it's different than who everyone else is. And I don't think that was the teaching that was intended, but that's the way I learned it. And so that was why I had that push and pull. And I think we've all done that. Nowadays, 2022, we're in a different world. I went and donated my time at the library last night to speak for them, because that's where I started my speaking career 20 years earlier. And, we can do these things in the last 20 years. We have the ability to, the society has opened up so that those of us that are weird, is what they used to be called, right? We have a place, and we're not so abnormal. There's still some, but we're much more accepted. It's mainstream. There was TV shows, and there's movies, there's all kinds of things that incorporate the metaphysical world. But in 1980, there wasn't. And so for all of those years, that's how I handled it, was I did this back and forth. And I think so many of us that are tapping into our intuition, that are growing our abilities, that are wanting to connect, that are looking for the signs, that are focusing on manifesting, that are wanting to attract abundance and all of those things. I think that it's not necessarily always about other people now. It's about us turning our backs on ourselves, because maybe we're not having the experience we want. Maybe we're not seeing things the way we want to see them. Maybe we're in a negative stinking thinking kind of place, and we can't seem to crawl out of it. Maybe especially over the last 2 years, we've gotten in so much fear that we aren't attracting the joys and experiences and abundance and possibilities that we want to create. We're attracting the heaviness and the fear and the scariness and the anger and the resentment and the judgment. And so I want to start with that, because wherever you find yourself in that space, in connection with your intuition, your connection to your angels, your guides, your loved ones, wherever you find yourself, you can move. And whatever experiences you're having, they can change. And it takes some work, but mostly it takes awareness and presence. That's what it mostly takes. The work is the action that we follow through with, but it's awareness first, because if you're unaware, it's, I always tell people, you can quote me on this because it's such a profound quote. You don't know what you don't know. Like, if you're not aware, you don't know what's missing. You don't know what could be when you have a lack of awareness. But once you're aware, once I had that experience, once you've had one of those cool experiences, once you've manifested something, you're like, oh my God, that I just put that on my vision board and I thought about it every day and I set my intentions and I affirmed it and I felt it and here it is. Once you have that, you can't ignore it or deny it. At least you can't in your soul. Maybe your mind might. Okay. Maybe your mind might. Do you have a question, Jamie?
Hold on. I'll mute myself. I do have a question. So going back to what you said a little bit ago about expecting, I mean, I think it's about expectations, right? We want something and we envision it a very specific way. And when there's potential for it to show itself to us and we're not open to however it's supposed to come. Like, I mean, I think of this with money. I think a lot of people do this with money, which is that they have this very specific intention of how money is supposed to find them. And then because they're only focused on that single vision, money is trying to find them in so many different other ways, and they just don't see it because they're so focused on this one expectation, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. When we're in our aware state, we are aware of all. We're not just here like this, and we're not paying attention to the peripheral. We're just kind of seeing exactly the place that we expect to see it. So it should show up on a Thursday at 2:00 looking like this. But when we are aware, it expands our view so that we can say, oh, it can come in this way, it can come in this way, it can come in this way, and it can come in this way. And that could be money, because money is just energy. So that whatever form of energy it shows up in, if we're aware, we're like, okay, thank you, I'm on the right track. But if we're like, oh, it wasn't a check that was supposed to be $495 on Thursday at 2:00, then we feel like, number one, we're not good enough. It didn't work. We're not good at doing this. The universe is against us. God doesn't love us. Like, we have all kinds of stories, right? So absolutely, we get into that state of negating what really is ours, period. It's ours to create. We get to create our lives, and we negate our ability to do that.
That the movie and or book Under the Tuscan Sun, I think, beautifully illustrates that, just in the vision of, she so desperately wanted to have a family, and she had this vision of what that looked like in her head. And then it just, she finally just gave up, believing that that was the only way. And then all of a sudden, literally magically, this incredible found family appeared before her. It was such a shift in awareness.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think when we become, yeah, you bet. I think when we become more aware, when we get into awareness, so the two things that are critical are awareness and presence. When we get into awareness, it allows us the ability to expand our view. And then when our view is expanded and we are present in the moment, not in the future, in the moment, in this moment right here, this moment right here, this moment, when we're present here, This is where spirit speaks. Spirit does not speak in the past. Over, done. Spirit does not ever speak in the past. Spirit does not speak in the future. Not here, doesn't exist. Spirit speaks in present moment. It's the only time you can catch it. So if you're someone who's wanting to connect with your angels are going to exist in this present moment, in this present moment. It's the only place they can exist. If you're wanting to connect with your deceased loved ones, only place they're going to exist is in this present moment, in this present moment. If you're wanting to connect with your ascended masters or your guides, all of that, this present moment. But if you are focused on where you're going, you're focused on how it should look, then you miss the whole experience. Okay, you miss the whole thing. And so all of you, I'm sure, can relate to a circumstance where, you know, you're whether you're calling in your angels or you're praying to God or whatever language you use, you're opening yourself up. So for me, it's just, I call it my spirit team, because I'm open, bring them all. I could use the help. My poor guardian angel, that soul has really picked a job, right? So she needs help. So when I call on my spirit team and I set the intention for whatever it is that I'm wanting to experience, whatever I want to tap into, let's say, I just want to open myself up to this present moment and whatever sign is, whatever is for my highest and greatest good. That's what I always ask for, my highest and greatest good. That way, I don't close myself off to the form that I expect things in, because I think we've all had that experience, and we've also had the experience where we're looking at, you know, our intuition, and we're asking our spirit team to come in and show us a sign. And again, we want the sign to be at this time in this way, and we tell them, okay, well, show me. I'd like to see rainbow right now. And from my experience, having worked for almost 40 years now with the spirit world consciously, it doesn't work that way. We don't get to tell them what sign, when, and how, because the how, and this is an important piece, the how is none of your business. The what, your business, okay? The feel of it, your business. The how, the form that it shows up in, none of your business. That is the universe's opportunity. It shows up bringing to you that or something better. I mean, haven't you ever had an experience where you wanted to attract? So I remember when we were looking for a new house. We had just remodeled our little house. We called it the little house. We just remodeled it, and we wanted to get a bigger space. And I did not want a pool. I was against a pool. I live in Arizona. What was I thinking, right? But I was against a pool. Well, my husband found this house that was the right price, and it was 6 bedrooms. It was way bigger than the house we had, and it had a pool. And so the universe knew what I didn't. See, I didn't want a pool because I was scared that my toddler, brand new, you know, it was a year and a half old, would drown. I just had this fear. And the universe knew that we needed a pool. And they became swimmers and lifeguards, my kids. I mean, water was a big deal in our world. I didn't know that, right? So if I had those blinders on like this, that it could only show up in the way that I thought it wouldn't have been as big of a house. It wouldn't have had the opportunities that it created for their lives all the way through their lives, right? So that's what awareness and presence bring to us. And so when you think about the experiences that you have in your life, and maybe you're wanting to tap into your intuition, maybe you're wanting to grow your connection to your angels and your spirit guides and your deceased loved ones, then what you want to remember is that it's your job to be open and to be present. So have the awareness and to be present, but it's not your job to tell or put in the how. You just stay open to the highest and greatest good for yourself, this or something better. All right. So once I started having class with the angels, they taught me a lot, and they're teachings that I still use in my daily life today, 38 years later. They haven't changed. The teachings have never swayed. It's never been like, oh, well, now it's 2022, so now you ought to do it this way. Nothing's changed. Because here's the thing, guys, there's nothing new. There's no new information. Everything is just recycled and recycled and recycled with a little different twist, with a little different picture, with a little pretty something on the front of the back, but it's the same guidance. So the guidance has not changed. Nothing in the core of the teachings are any different. And so what the angels have taught me, and this is where I thought we could go with this, is first and foremost, they have taught me that I have to ask for help. So when I was writing my book, I wrote a book called Invoking the Archangels in 2011. And when I wrote it, one of the things that they gave me was they gave me a 4-step process. And the 4-step process was, I loved it because I'm not usually like I love processes, but I don't usually have my own processes. I'm like, I just try to muddle my way through things. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a process. This is so cool. Thank you very much. Right. Because that's just not how my mind works. So they gave me a 4-step process. And they said, first, ask. You must ask. And, I interpreted that as not only ask, like in the sense of ask, like from the state of intention or prayer that way, but of our angels or our guides, but also to ask in this realm. Do we ask for help? Do we ask for help and then only accept it in ways that are comfortable for us? If we are asking for help and somebody comes and offers it and we say, oh, no, I can do it myself, then what does that do to the message that to the energy that the angels are bringing to you? It negates it. Jamie, you have a question? Nope, just comment. Yeah, okay. It negates it. It says, oh, nope, I don't need that. And so now I was really surprised by this because my nature is to do it myself, because I don't know about any of you, but I'm an ex-control freak. And I happen to know that nobody can do whatever it is as good as me. So if I'm going to load the dishwasher, I'm going to do it really well. You're probably not going to do it as well, right? If I'm going to sweep the floor, you probably can't sweep the floor as good as I can, right? Like, it was ridiculous, the things that in my head I felt like I had to do, and I was the only one capable of doing them. And that goes like in all different directions of my life, right? So I really had to work on that. So when they said to me, you've got to learn to ask for help, and I learned this when I was a teenager, they told me when I was a teenager, but I didn't learn it. Because what I discovered is I could only rely on myself. But the reason I could only rely on myself is because I believed that I had to do it all myself. So, right, the thought I was putting out was coming back. I was creating that attraction, that energy. And so when I was learning how to ask for help, well, how many of you, is it comfortable to ask for help? Is it fun to ask for help? Is it like, feel like you're vulnerable? And feel like maybe some insecurity around it. Like, I don't want people to know I need help. Like, that's such a bad thing, right? So when they said, okay, you need to learn to ask for help. And when calling in your angels specifically, you've got to ask for help. And then as they started showing me, really, it's not just here in spirit, but it's here in our human physical experience. And I realized when I first saw my guardian angel, my mom asked for help. And because she didn't know what to do. And they appeared in a way that we never could have known what was going to come from that. This is almost 40 years later, and I am telling the same story. I am teaching the same principles. I've created a career for 20 plus years based on that experience. could never have known that because she asked for help. And because I believe on a soul level, because I wasn't the one asking for help, but I had been talking to my mom and I had been sharing my frustrations. So sometimes the asking for help isn't, hello, could you help me? You know, sometimes it's a desire, and it's a want that is expressed energetically. It's not always through words, but that was the first thing they said. It's number one, you got to ask. Okay. The second thing that we needed to do, excuse me, grab a drink. The second thing that we needed to do is we needed to allow. Okay, now here's the deal. So we asked for help. Okay, fine, got that one. Now I have to actually get out of the way. Okay, so you mean like the way I think it should happen isn't the right way? You mean to get out of the way and like actually let people come in? Like allow meant to get out of the way. So to not stop the process, to not step in and again, think I could control it, right? So first step was asking, okay, yeah, I figured, okay, I can get to that. Now I got to allow it. Ooh, okay, that one was a little harder. Then the third step was they said, you got to believe it. So if I'm wanting to create or manifest something in my life, I've got to ask and I've got to allow and I've got to believe it. And I'm like, well, I've always heard that I'll believe it when I see it. My dad always said that. I don't know if you guys ever heard that term, but you know, somebody say, hey, I'll come over onto, yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. Right? Like that was the language I grew up with. So they said, no, you've got to believe it in order to see it. And I was like, well, I don't think this is going to go very well. I'm not sure that, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work that way. And so then the believing it, when we think about a belief, I believe beliefs are something that we fall in, like we fall back on. It's not necessarily the very first thing in our head. It's the thing that's like the core, the foundation. It's rooted inside of us. So we've got to create beliefs around these things. I have to believe that I'm deserving of it. I have to believe that I'm worthy of it. I have to believe that person can come into my life, or that money can show up in my chosen career. You know, I have to believe it. And that if I could believe it, and to me, that belief is embodying it. It's feeling it. It's seeing it. It's knowing. And almost like it's absorbing, like you're bringing it into it within you. And if I could believe it, then the last step 4, was then you receive it. Now, here's the funny thing about receiving. I don't know if any of you are like this too, but okay, I got over the asking. Okay, I can ask, allow, now I got to get out of my way. Okay, now I got to believe it. Okay, now I got to receive it. So the receiving was opening your hands. And what I discovered in my life, I don't know about you guys, but when the angels were teaching me how to actually create and manifest, receiving was my hardest part. It got over the asking because I'm like, okay, well, at least if I ask spirit, I don't have to ask anybody here, and I don't have to be like rejected. So it was a little safer to ask for spirit, ask for support from spirit. But when I got to receiving, I discovered I am not a good receiver. I am a great giver. I'll give you anything. I can give you advice. I can give you support. I'll come and you can cry on my shoulder. I'll help you clean your house. I am a great giver. I will give and give and give all day. But to be on the other end of that, to be the receiver of energy, time, money, support, that one was hard. And so when we think about it, when we're in the manifestation mode, we're like, hey, I want to attract, $1,000 by Friday. Okay. Yep. That's great. You can do that. And people get really excited. Like, that's what I want. But then when we get to the real truth of receiving, to the foundation of receiving, the angel said, Receiving isn't about the money. It's about the value. It's about you knowing your worth. It's about you feeling deserving. That's what receiving is about always. So it isn't just enough to just ask. You have to be in alignment. You have to believe, not believe that the money is coming, believe that you deserve it. Believe that you are worthy of it. Believe that you are good enough for it. And that is where we screw up most of the time. Okay.
I'm giggling over here because I'm thinking to myself, like, this is where everybody starts crying. This is where everybody's like, oh my God, I'm such a good giver and such a crappy receiver.
For sure. It's very true. And you know, the thing is most of us know this because it's innate in our training. I mean, there's cycles of training, and we can see it in generational patterns, you know, and part of the training has been you have to earn and you have to work hard, and you don't deserve it. I mean, my dad would tell me, you don't deserve that, you know, and you know, he wasn't an asshole, but he wasn't meaning to be at that time. He was just saying, you know, you haven't done what I believe you should do in order to deserve it. But the way we internalize it is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I don't have the value equal to the thing that I desire. So when we start to work with the angels, and really get into that, ask, allow, believe, receive. I'm going to talk to you about some of the different angels and how you can work with them to help support you in that receiving state, and in the place of whether it's receiving healing, whether it's receiving the manifestations of your dreams, whether it's receiving relationships, love. We're going to start with love, because I think that's actually probably the biggest thing that changed in my life, is when I could learn to love myself unconditionally. And I think that a lot of people feel like they do in their heads, which is not a feeling. It's a thought. But they don't feel it in their heart, in their spirit. And again, a lot of that is training, because we're trained, you know, especially if you're brought up in religious background. If you do this, then you're not good. If you don't do this, then you are good. You know, there's all these rules to make you have a really foundational belief that I'm only good if I do all these things perfectly, and I'm not worthy otherwise. And so not only do I not deserve, or I don't have value, but also how could I be loved? How can I be good enough? And so Archangel Chamuel is the angel that I was first introduced to in connection with unconditional love. It wasn't the first angel I was introduced to, but the first one in connection with unconditional love. And Chamuel came to me later down the road. I'd had some experiences, probably about 15, 16 with Chamuel, but really didn't start integrating Chamuel's energy until I was in my late 20s. And the experience that kind of triggered this, the one that stands out the most, although, you know, I don't like to say this, but it's true. I used to think I was a really fast learner, because I really like to learn fast. I'm an Aries. I like to do everything fast. Like, come on. But when it comes to like emotional things and patterns, I haven't always been very fast. So I might be on the slow boat sometimes there. And especially with emotional patterns, it would just, you know, I've had lots of experiences because it's taken me a little bit of time to figure it out. So this particular one with learning to love myself has been one of those lifelong journeys. And Chamuel was the angel that came to me, and I started working with. I think I was 28, and my son was 10, and my son was a wild child. He was born with lots of diagnoses. There was lots of challenges with him. And I didn't always do very well. I did what I could, and I never beat him, never even spanked him. So I'm proud of that. But I didn't always do well managing his needs because my own insecurities and needs and lack of self-love were in the way. And so when he was 10, he'd stayed with my mom for a few days, who was the only person that actually would ever even watch him. They just couldn't even control. He was uncontrollable. And so my mom had kept him for a couple of days so I could have a break. And he decided to start my brother's mattress on fire in the house. And he wanted to see, he was a very curious child. He wanted to see what was behind speakers. You guys remember the old speakers with the kind of thin kind of film? We just lit those just to see what was behind them. And so after 2 little fires, luckily the house didn't start on fire. My mom called me and said, come and get your kid. So she lived in Tucson. So I went to Tucson to go get him, which is 2 hours away for those of you that aren't in Arizona. And when I came back, I was bawling. I was so upset because he had only been there for like a day. I needed a couple of days. And because I really thought I was going to lose my mind a lot of times with him. And sometimes I wasn't sure if we were both going to end up alive at the end of whatever the end was. And so after I got home, I called her and I said, I'm just am shocked. Like I don't know what to say. And she goes, well, if you don't do something about him, he's going to end up in prison. And it wasn't the prison part that pissed me off. What pissed me off was I had been, since he was 5, I had been taking him to healers, therapists, doctors. He was in a study at Phoenix Children's Hospital. I had done every modality. I'm talking hundreds of modalities in every possible thing that could possibly help him. So my mom knew that I was doing something. I had been doing lots of things and spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And so when she said that, it infuriated me. And I hung up the phone and I cried on the stairs for like a couple of hours. And a voice said to me, it's not about him, it's about you. And I was like, well, that's dumb. He obviously has all of the issues. I'm not the one that's jumping off the countertops and for probably about 10 minutes, that's all the voice said. It's not about him, it's about you. It's not about him, it's about you. And so I sat there listening to that voice. I'm like, okay, well, that was enough. And I got up and really wanted to be in denial of that. And thought, well, I've done everything I can possibly think of to do with him. Maybe it's about me. Like I said, I'm a little slow sometimes. So I started digging in for myself. And I realized that one of the intentions I had when I had him, I was a teenage mom and I wasn't with his dad. His dad was an alcoholic. I mean, I was with him, but we weren't like on the same page. And he was an alcoholic and he was a nice guy. He just had a problem. And one of the things that I wanted when I was pregnant with him was I really, really wanted to be able to love him unconditionally. In my pregnancy, I knew this. I was a teenager. And I also knew I didn't love myself. And my spirit knew that I couldn't give this baby what I didn't have. And so although I had the awareness of it, and although I actually really had worked on that, I finally left his birth father when he was a little over 2. And, I met my husband a year later and we started moving in a healthy, positive direction. But I never really got to looking at the core for me, because then he was there and then he was crazy and wild and I never created space for me. And so as I looked at that, Archangel Shamuel is who came to me to help me to learn to love myself unconditionally. And it's interesting because it was through my son's behaviors that forced me to look at myself. So it was my love for him, although it wasn't unconditional, that began to look to myself and work on the love that I needed to have for me. And that was a very difficult experience. What I became aware of is that over those 5 or 6 years that I was taking him to all these healers and doctors and naturopaths and homeopaths and acupuncture, every single thing there was, that the message I was giving him was that there was something wrong with him and that he needed to be fixed. And that it created a lot of self-esteem issues for him. And those self-esteem issues were just mine that were projected onto him. And it wasn't intentional. I didn't know what I was doing at that time. But once I had the awareness of it, then I had to figure out, how do you forgive yourself for 10 years projecting that experience that I had within myself onto him. And so Shamuel began the journey of helping me to learn to love myself. Then Archangel Zadkiel came in to help teach me how to forgive myself. And that wasn't a fun couple of years. I did not enjoy it. It was really, I would just cry myself to sleep lots of nights, because once you've done something that you can't undo, and you can do better, but you couldn't undo it. And I was in such guilt and shame around it. And when Zadkiel started showing up, Zadkiel helped me to see that the only way that this was a mistake, that my son actually came to teach me, that I was the parent and I thought I was the teacher, but I was not the teacher. And that the only way that any of this, because I just felt like, oh my God, I've made so many mistakes, and it was never my intention. That it was never a mistake if I learned from it, if I grew, and if I released the energy that I was attaching to the judgment I was attaching to it. And so what Zadkiel guided me to do, actually literally told me word for word, sit down and write. So I'll tell you exactly what we did. Jamie?
Quick clarification. Spell the
Shamuel?
Shamuel, I know how to spell. I'm quite familiar.
Gotcha. Zadkiel is Zadkiel. Zadkiel.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.
And Zadkiel is vibrates the color purple. So Zadkiel had me sit down and write out all of the people that I felt like I needed to forgive. Okay, well, I put myself, because obviously that's what I was focused on. But then who else do you need to forgive? And so I had my dad and I had my son, and because even though I knew I needed forgiveness, I felt like I needed to forgive him too for being such a pain in my ass, So, and I had my ex and a couple of other boyfriends that were mean, some friends, things like my second grade teacher. I went all the way back. Okay, let's just get, if we're going to do this, let's just do it right and get everybody out on the paper. So I had that paper and it was filled up. And so then I sat there and I looked at it and they're like, okay, so I'm like, okay, well, who do I start with? Do I start with the one that is the hardest, or do I start with the easiest? Me, I like to check things off my list. I don't know if you guys like that. You just like to put the little X and mark it off, like, okay, good, I've accomplished something, right? That's part of that control freak stuff. So, so I looked at the list and I'm like, well, the one that's causing me the most pain is myself. So I'm going to start with me. And so I started by writing out so much. I wrote so much in those years, all the stories and all the memories and all the pains where I felt like I had done something wrong, where I had made a bad decision. And after I did that, they wanted me with each one, find the gift or the value or the blessing. And so I'd write it out, and then I'd write what the gift is, what the value is, or what the blessing is. That took me 2 years to do all of that, because I had a lot stored inside of me. But as I started to look at them and release them, after you do it a little bit, then it's like, well, I don't really need to write it. I know the story, so I'll just kind of do it in my head. Doesn't work. You literally got to purge that energy out. And so as I released that energy, and I wrote, what the value and the gift was, what I could look at is I could see, as I went through story after story, experience after experience after experience, I could see the purpose, and I could see the lesson, and I could have gratitude actually for those pains, for those difficulties, for the challenges, for all of the things that I had felt like I had done so wrong. It wasn't saying, oh, it's okay. It was saying, yes, and you've learned, and here's the value or the gift. So when I did that, then it was, I was like, okay, I think I've forgiven myself. Now, let me tell you one thing I've learned, because as life happens, different layers come at different times. So you can be complete at one time, and then years later, there's another layer that you didn't recognize you had, because we're going deeper. We gather width, but we go deep, right? And we go as deep as we can for what we have awareness of at the time. And then when we're ready to expand again, then we go deeper. And so a lot of times I have people say, I've already worked on this. I've already done this. I went to therapy for 30 years. Okay, that's great. And there's just a little more to do, because we're in another, we're going deeper. We're going to another layer. We're going to another level, right? And so at that time, I'm like, okay, I feel complete. So this was, 20 years ago. And then I looked at my list of all of my people, and I'm like, okay, well, now I've got to start forgiving all of the people. So after I'd done the forgiveness with myself, which took a couple of years, I go to my list of the people I need to forgive. And as I looked at the list, there wasn't anything there. Because what I realized after, I didn't know this when I was doing it, but after, when I went to look at the list, was I am the common denominator in all of it. And when I forgave myself in all these stories, the energy was clear. It was gone. I didn't need to forgive my dad. I didn't need to forgive my ex. It wasn't there. And so the greatest thing that Zadkiel taught me was to find the purpose, the value, the gift in the experience. And when you can see that, even though it could be something really shitty, it could be something that was really hard, horribly painful, could have been, the horrific things we talk about, death, murder, rape. It could be any of those things, but that there is value, and there is purpose, and there is experience that we can take from that, and that we can gather to see a bigger picture. Because on a soul level, it's not about all of the details of the human experience. It's about the expansion of the soul. And so the angels taught me that. And so Zadkiel was very, very helpful for me, and really helped me to free myself from so much of that pain. Now, one of the angels that I think is important to talk about and is one that people are mostly familiar with, is Archangel Raphael. So Archangel Raphael vibrates the color green, and he is the angel of healing. When I say he and she, by the way, they don't actually have sexes because they don't actually have bodies. But we assign them more of a masculine or feminine energy based on the humanness of us. So the reality of it is they don't have bodies. They actually don't even have names, because we don't have names in the spirit world. We're just frequency and vibration. But that's the way that we keep order in this human realm. So when I'm saying he or she, I just want you to recognize, if you're like, oh, I kind of felt like that was more a feminine energy, then it's just the way you relate to the energy, and you're right. Okay, so I'm not right, you're right. It's however it appears to you. Same with the colors. The colors, the way that the colors started coming to me when I was 13 is literally, I would see this cobalt blue, and then Michael would say, I'm Michael, and bring in this energy. And so I would start to learn, and I am Raphael, and it would be this emerald green. So that's how I started to separate them. But some people will say, well, I've always saw Michael as purple. Then keep it. Okay, I'm not right. I'm just an experience, right? So Archangel Raphael, let's talk about him a little bit. So Raphael is the angel of healing. He helps us to heal physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual levels. And I have had more than my fair share of miracles with Archangel Raphael. I have been one who is a very good manifester. And I manifest the really not so good stuff as fast and as quick as I manifest the really good stuff. And the way I learn the best is through my body. So Raphael has helped me a lot in creating healing in my body. And I believe that the physical healing is always connected to emotional healing. On some level, there's something that's out of alignment with the truth of who we are. Raphael came to me at a time in my life where literally I was dying. And I had, I discovered I was pregnant when I was 18. And by the time I discovered I was pregnant, I was about 12 weeks pregnant. That's how in denial I was about it. And by the time I got to the doctor, we discovered that I had toxemia. I was having a lot of pain and things. I didn't really know what it was from. And they, when we went and actually had the first ultrasound, also discovered with all the blood work that I was toxic. And so that toxemia was very serious. And I ended up being on bed rest, and they put me, I had to move back in with my mom. I was living with my boyfriend at the time. I moved back in with my mom because I was on severe bed rest. Like I could only get up to use the restroom, and that was it. And then come to my doctor's appointments. I had a doctor appointment every day. So I went to the hospital one day to have stress tests done. And then I went to the doctor's office the other day to have my protein in my urine checked, because that's how they start to see if you get eclamptic or pre-eclamptic, those kinds of things. And so my health was at great risk, and so was the baby's. Within a couple of months, that did turn into preeclampsia. And within a couple of months of that, it turned into eclampsia. And my blood pressure, I was on blood pressure medication, a lot of blood pressure medication to try to even just keep me at a high blood pressure. And back in the day, I think part of it was I was on state aid because I didn't have insurance. I wasn't planning on having a baby. So, and I went on food stamps and welfare because I wasn't working. And so they didn't keep me in the hospital like they do many women that have insurance, because I was a teenager and not they weren't going to make any money off of it, is one of the parts that happened there. And so when I went in to deliver my son the second time, the first time I was in labor for 36 hours and with Pitocin, and they sent me home after 36 hours because I didn't dilate. And so 10 days later, I went back in, and I had a stroke while I was in labor. And then they did an emergency C-section to save the baby, because they weren't sure they were going to be able to save me or not. And I came through, and within a couple of days, so I developed a 106.3 degree temperature, and had that temperature for almost 3 weeks. And during that time, my mom took the baby home and took care of him, because I couldn't, and they wouldn't let me see the baby because they didn't know what the infection was from. I had a oozing infection from my breasts to my knees. So my skin literally was like a burn victim's. It was just green, open guck. And my cesarean, they had taken him by cesarean. They actually went in and did another cesarean and went in to see if they left any tools inside of me, which they said they didn't. But that's where the infection started. And that went on for 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, you know, a lot of people talk about a near-death experience, and they check out and they go to the light, and then they have some kind of conversation, and then usually they come back. I didn't have a light. I wasn't conscious most of the time. Most of those days, I was very in and out of consciousness. But the majority of the time that I have memory of, I actually was above my body and hanging out in the lights, where the lights were in the hospital, but not, so I could see what was going on to my body. I could see my nurse come in. I had a male nurse, which I was so embarrassed because I was 18 and I still had the insecurity of the 18-year-old in my body, above my body. Like, oh my gosh, she's seeing my breasts. I like things like that. Like, I was so embarrassed. And I knew the cowlicks on his head. He had 3 of them, which is unique. And so that's where I spent most of that 3 weeks. And they couldn't ever get the temperature down. I was on tons of antibiotics and all kinds of things. They put me in cold baths and all different types, not baths, but towels all over me, ice cold towels, trying to break the fever. And it was, of course, scary for my parents. I believe I came back because my mom and dad would have died raising my son. All of them wouldn't have lived, I don't think. But when I was out, I never saw white light. It was just darkness. And that's interesting because I had this angelic connection and I had this awareness and all of that. And I think I never had the option, like with near-death experiences, most of the time it's like, you got to go back. I was never getting to go in the first place. It was just almost like I was void of consciousness. I didn't have any memory of consciousness. And once in a while I'd pop back into my body and it was so extremely painful that I would just somehow pop back out. But the day before Mother's Day, it was a Saturday, and I had been in the hospital for, I think 18 days at that point. The doctors came in and I was conscious. I was in my body. My dad was there, which was rare. My dad had only come 2 or 3. I didn't have any visitors because they wouldn't let many people come, and I didn't have any friends. So my mom was taking care of the baby. So my dad was there and he left. And a couple of hours later, as the doctors came in, I was by myself, and they explained to me that they didn't have any other options. There was nothing else they could do. And that they were going to stop the medications because they weren't working. And they didn't know what else to do. And I needed to sign my rights over to my son, so that, because I was a single mom, that if something happened to me, they would know who was responsible for my son. When they said that to me, I had probably an immature response in my head. I didn't say this out loud, but you know, I was 18 years old. Well, I just turned 19 actually. And I was thinking, well, when people are sick, they go to the hospital and then the hospital makes them better. And all I did was have a baby. Like, it's not like it should be some major thing. I just had a baby. Why is this such a big deal? Right. That was my head thought. But they gave me the paper, and what it did was it activated in me a couple of things. The first thing is it pissed me off because I felt like I was put in a corner, and they're like, basically, you're going to die. And that ignited a fight in me. I think that's part of what that darkness was, is I was checked out, and it ignited that part of me that said, well, you're not going to tell me I'm going to die. Like, if anybody's going to tell me, I'm going to, right? So that part came up. And the other thing that came out was a recognition of how sick I was. I didn't realize it. And so that day after they left, Archangel Raphael appeared right in my room. And the message that he gave to me was that I was to visualize that literally he was going to breathe life into me. And I was to visualize the healing energy. It's an emerald green energy, this healing energy that I literally was breathing it into my body. And when I breathed out, to breathe out the toxins. And so I was strapped down to my bed because my infection was so bad and it was so itchy that I would have probably just, made it bleed. And so they had me strapped down. So my arms were really open. And I realized that in my desperation from when those doctors came, I got scared and I asked for help. I didn't ask for help in a formal way, but I said, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I need help. And so Raphael inspired me to do this breathing exercise, which I did for 12 hours. And the other thing is he inspired me to call all of my family, everyone, and ask for help, which was not my nature. And I called my Mormon family. I called my Christian family. I called my woo-woo people. I called and I asked for help from everyone. At this point, I never would have asked my Mormon family for anything ever, because there's a lot of conflict there, because I was pregnant and not married. I was very shamed and shunned. I never would have asked anyone, but this was beyond the human judgment. This was beyond religion. This was beyond any of that. This was life or death. And so I called everyone and I asked for help. And I laid and did that visualization for 12 hours. And the next morning was Mother's Day. And I think it was 6 a.m. They came in and my fever had broke. And they couldn't explain it because they took me off the antibiotics. And the next day, Monday, I checked myself out of the hospital. And I checked myself out of the hospital because I decided if I were going to die, I was going to go home and see my baby before I did. Now, it took me a couple of months to get back and get healthy. It was a long road, but obviously I had no problems from the stroke or the disease or any of those kinds of things. And what this really, what I'm wanting you to take from this is that inspiration, I have experienced similar things like this, not to where I was near death like that, but many, many physical miracles with Archangel Raphael's help. I've also experienced his help with addictions and cravings. I don't have really an addictive personality, but one of the things I was addicted to was soda years ago when I was 26 or 27. And I discovered that, remember, I'm a really good manifester. So I'd manifested osteopenia at 27 years old, and my bones were like 50-year-olds at the time. And soda was the only thing that we could connect it to that was an issue. But I drank a 2-liter bottle of soda a day. Like people would drink coffee or whatever. I drank a 2-liter bottle of soda a day. And I had tried many times, the headaches and all. I tried many times. And I was sitting in my kitchen on a Thursday afternoon. You know how you usually stop? If you're going to stop something, you stop it on Monday morning. This was a Thursday afternoon. I was breaking the rules. And I just said, Archangel Raphael, help me to release the need and the desire for the soda. I never had another soda again in my life. It wasn't like I even had to hardly try. it literally was like gone from me. So Raphael can help you with simple, what we call simple things like that, or life altering changes like life or death, and everything in between. I have worked with Raphael to help people heal physical disease, to help them move through their emotions, to help them be able to tap in to their patterns and heal patterns in their lives by working with Raphael. And so what I want to encourage you is that when you're calling in Raphael, the great thing about it is you don't need to know what needs to be healed. You just need to ask for that healing, and then allow, believe, and receive. Raphael's energy is very powerful, and probably the one, yes, Shamuel's the one that opened me up for love, but Raphael's the one that's helped me to heal so much of the physical manifestation, because when you're an empath, as many of you are, we often take so much of the weight of the world, and not only do we just take it and put it on our shoulders, but we embody it. And it often manifests as illness. And it could be little illnesses. It could be, for years, one of mine was allergies. I had allergies for years. And I started working with Raphael, 25 years ago for the allergies. And I never have allergies. I haven't had them for 25 years. And they just all of a sudden went away. And I was one of those people that, they do the little scratches on your back to see how many. Out of 150 things, I was allergic to, it was either 132 or 136. I have none. Well, yeah, I even had a recent one like about 5 years ago, pineapple, and now I'm okay with pineapple too. So my point in sharing this is I want you to hear this as inspiration. Okay, this is me helping you recognize the power that working with the angels and asking for their help and support and opening up and developing your relationship and connecting with them day by day by day and listening to that guidance and tapping into your intuition and paying attention to the present moment, how that can change your life. Because, the truth of the matter is I wouldn't be here many times over if it weren't for that support and that guidance and that direction. I might not even be alive, but I for sure wouldn't be here. Okay. Anybody have any questions at this point before I carry on? Jamie?
I do not see any questions on Facebook, and I'm not seeing a whole heck of a lot. I just want to point out that first of all, I can totally relate. I don't know if you know this, but at 7, I was in the hospital for a month and almost died as well. So the out-of-body experience, the staying for my mom, I definitely stayed for my mom, saw her sweet little body just like crying hysterically over that body that was me, but it wasn't really me.
Right.
Like yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I totally relate to that. I like the echo in my head personally is ask and ye shall receive. It's the receiving part that I get tripped up over.
Yep.
But I like what you said earlier, which was kind of you don't need to know what needs to be healed. It's the same with no matter what you're asking for. So you don't need to know what, you just need to ask.
Yeah. It's not your job to figure out the how. And we get in the way when we try to. So okay, well, how am I going to heal this disease? Many of you that are a part of my community know that my assistant, Robin, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 4 years ago. And in the overview of the medical records after we got all of that back, as her and me and several of her family members and friends sat and just read through all of the information, it was overwhelming. And it was like 38 pages. I mean, she had like 11 breaks in her body, bones broken from cancer, and tumors and all of these things. And she had needed a partial hip replacement because her bones were dust. And as we read it, so if you're in the how, can figure that out. But what Spirit just said to me is break it down, make it easy. And some of you that were around then know I put out we created a website, and we started auctioning off her body parts. So I'm like, okay, who wants to send prayers and love to? And then her circulatory system, her bones, her skin, her individual organs, so that each person was intentional with that particular area. And Raphael inspired that in me. I was sitting in the hospital when I heard it very clearly, the same voice that I'm very familiar with. It said, break it down, make it simple, ask for help. And we did. And she healed. And so there's a process that that little ask, allow, believe, receive process really, really helps. And it works, but you have to get out of the way in thinking that you know the way, because we don't know the way. We don't know the way. If we knew the way, we would have avoided the way, right? We would have said, I'll go down a different road. I'm not going to take this journey. So what we know is how we want to feel. And what we know is what we don't want. So when you know what you don't want, if you don't know what you do want, then you focus on what you don't want and you flip all those. So I don't want to feel like this. Okay, then that means I want to feel like this, right? So a lot of times just figuring out what you want helps you to direct the energy. And then it's, hey, surprise me. I started a couple of years ago reminding people, this is something that I do. If I'm in a funky place or something, I'll ask myself, how good can you handle it today? How good can you handle it? How much goodness can you bring in today? And then take the ride, see where it takes you. How much of that goodness can you bring? So breaking it down. And Raphael, man, I'll tell you what, you ought to have him on your healing team. I know y'all have doctors or naturopaths or homeopaths or whatever kind of paths you have. But Raphael ought to be one of them. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about Michael. So Archangel Michael, he's the popular one. He's like how I wanted to be in school, right? Everybody knows Michael and everybody knows mostly about what he's about. People already have a relationship with him. Michael was the first archangel I was introduced to. And Michael's energy is about, most people use the term protection. So he's protective. He helps us to protect our energy. He gives us the courage and the strength to be able to take, the steps in life and protect us from harm. And when I was introduced to him, it's actually a pretty cool story. Some of you that are familiar with me, you've heard the story before, but it is a cool story. So I'm going to share it. Even though it's 40 years old almost. But when I was very first having those experiences with the angels, my little brother is 8 years younger than me. And so at the time I was 13 and he was 5. Yes, that adds up. Okay, just making sure my addition is done. Like, wait, did he change ages? No. Because see, when you get older, it's like every time I tell the story, I'm like, okay, this was 25 years ago. Now this is 35 years. Oh my God, now it's 38 years ago. Like it just keeps getting further away. I'm like, and I am staying the same age. I don't know how it works, right? How does this work? So anyway, my mom and dad decided to go out to dinner to discuss things because they weren't in a good place. There was a lot of anger and pain and resentment and fighting and all that kind of stuff. So they didn't want to do that around us. And so they went out to dinner. Well, this was the first time that they decided to go out and leave me with my brother. So he was 5 and I was 13. I understand that most girls babysat their siblings or they babysat neighbors, kids and stuff like that. I was not one of those. Nobody ever considered me for babysitting. Kids weren't my thing. Not really interested. And I had much better things to do than that. And usually what I was doing, believe it or not, was reading. I loved to learn. So, and I still do. And so I didn't have time to watch somebody else's kid, because then I'd interrupt my learning or reading or whatever I was doing. So this time they decided to leave me, and they were going to go out to dinner. And so, okay, they leave. And about 20 minutes after they left or so, my brother was upstairs and he was playing up in his room with his guys, He-Man and Skeletor and those kind of guys. And he starts yelling as he's running down the stairs. And I'm in the living room, and he runs down the stairs. He goes, "Sonny, all of my friends are black and brown and green, ugly, frowny faces." Now, let me take you a step back. Since he started talking, which he talked a little bit late, so maybe 3. Since he'd started talking, he always talked about his friends. His friends were circles, squares, and triangles, colorful, like red, blue, and yellows, bright, primary colors, with wings. Okay. He always talked about his friends. And we were just like, it's his imagination, kind of. And then we were kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's his angels. After I had my angel experience, I'm like, it's probably his angels, right? Like mine come floating over my bed. His could come with wings. I don't know. So, but they were always positive. He played with his friends more than he played with people. Like he liked to play with his friends. So, okay, fine. Well, now all of his friends were gone, and these black and brown and dark green frowny faces were here instead. And I was not always I didn't always believe him that he actually had friends. So like if we were going to go to the store, he'd need to have all of his friends get in the shopping cart. So we'd have to have a different shopping cart. He would get them in the car, and we had to, get them all piled in the car. And I would just shut the door right on his friends, because, they weren't really real, is what I thought. And then, I had this whole awakening myself. And so he was very scared, like trembling scared. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the big sister, and I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to abracadabra something so that his friends can come back, or whatever he needs, just to get him quiet and carry on, right? So I went to go up the stairs, and I went to put my foot to take a step up the stair, and literally there was something that pushed me back. Like it forced me back, and that scared the crap out of me. And so I grabbed him and I picked him up, and I ran to the far corner of the house there was a brick wall. That's where my head took me, is okay, get behind the brick wall. Well, by this time, I was already having experiences seeing spirits move through rooms, from one room to the other room, not through a door. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know why I'm by a brick wall, but it feels safer to me. So we were there for over 5 hours. Because this isn't something my grandmother only lived like 5 blocks away. Not something I could go to my grandma about. My grandma's very religious. Okay, grandma, well, his black, brown friends are here, and his pretty friends are gone. And like, I couldn't explain it. But when my parents got home, I told her, and I was scared. And she said, all right, I'll call my friend Leo. So my mom had a friend she'd met in her metaphysical class. It was an underground class in Salt Lake City, Utah, with an underground psychic and an underground palmist and a couple of others. And so she said, I'll call her in the morning and ask her to come over and do a clearing on the house. So I'm pretty sure we slept with my parents that night. Next morning, we got up, and Leo came over, and she says, okay, well, I'm going to do a clearing on the house. I'm going to call on Archangel Michael and ask him to come in and clear the space. I'd never heard of Archangel Michael before, because that wasn't anything I knew about. I hadn't started having the visitations yet, because this was shortly after the experiences that I had. I was starting to see the deceased people, but I hadn't had my classes hadn't started yet. So she said, okay, Shad went outside. He's riding his big wheel up in front of the house, back and forth in front of the house. And as he rides his big wheel, he doesn't know anything that we're doing. So doors closed, and Leo says, okay, let's just stand in the foyer of the house. So we did. And she said, I want everybody to close their eyes. So everybody closes their eyes. I close one eye, because I'm gonna see what's gonna happen, because this has got to be pretty amazing. So I got one eye open, one eye closed, and then she does this prayer, and there was a lot more to it than what I'm going to say, but the basics of it were, I invoke the blue light of Archangel Michael to surround and protect this home from any negative energy or entities, seen or unseen. Okay. And so, we all listened, and when she was done, she said, and so it is. And so we said, and so it is. And my mom immediately, she gets done and she shakes her whole body and she's like, oh my God, I feel so much better already. And I'm like, oh, brother. And I'm saying, oh, brother, because my eye was open and nothing happened. Nobody came in. There wasn't any blue light. There was no like magical sword that cut through it. Like nothing happened. So I'm just about to say, okay, well, nothing happened. So I don't know why you're feeling that way. When my brother comes right through the front doors and he opens the door and he says, Mommy, there's a great big blue bubble around our house. Yep, that's exactly what I did. I was like, So what did that teach me that day? It taught me that when you call on your angels, they're there, whether you know they're there or not, whether you see them or not, and even if you believe them to be there or not, they're there. It also taught me that you can, if you're visual, my brother was very visual, that you can see spirit and not even know what you're seeing. My brother didn't know. He was 5. He didn't even have words to describe it. He's just, as soon as it was intended, as soon as Leo said that, he saw the protection appear. And it also taught me to focus on your gift. So I'm a feeler. I've always been a feeler since I was a child. I was focused on seeing because I wanted proof. I wasn't embracing the gift I have, being a feeler. I was trying to have a different gift than I have, because that seemed to me like the one that would be easier, the seeing, because feeling wasn't really fun. But what that experience taught me is that when you have an innate natural gift, your intuition comes through clairsentience, a feeler, or clairvoyance, seeing, or clairaudience, hearing, or claircognizance, knowing, whatever way your experience comes through, that is your natural gift. And in order to expand all of the other gifts, because we all have all of them, in order to expand the others, we've got to embrace our natural one. And so as a feeler, I had to learn to embrace my feelings, and it sucked. It wasn't fun. And I didn't want to embrace it because it wasn't comfortable, right? I wanted to see. And so that exercise, I was using my eyes to see, and I missed the whole experience. My mom, who is a feeler also, was tapped in. I was teasing her, but she was tapped into her feelings, and she felt the energy shift. And my brother saw the energy shift. I had no experience at all because I was in my head trying to find proof. So what Michael taught me that day was that always tune in and tap into your natural intuitive abilities first and foremost, in order to then expand the others. But the other thing I've learned since is that I think it's very similar to how we are as human beings. We have a group of people here, and we all have different wants and desires in our lives. And a lot of times we don't really believe in our abilities or our gifts. We don't see them as gifts. Like I didn't see mine as a gift. Being a feeler was not a gift to me. But people would say, oh, that's such a great gift. I'd be like, are you kidding me? Do you know what this is like in here? Being inside of this body is not fun. But it's the same as how we are on a human level. I'm sure that if some of you are like me, when I was young, I wanted to be 5'10", and I'm shrinking probably now, but I was almost 5'7", right? So I want to be 5'10", and I have blue eyes and blonde hair like everybody in my family, except for my brother and my mom. My entire family, like 100 people, we all have blue eyes and blonde hair. I wanted brown eyes because my brother and my mom have brown eyes. I want brown eyes. I wanted to have dark hair. Here I have light hair, right? So I couldn't ever really see my own natural beauty because I was so focused on wanting what I didn't have. And it works the same in our spiritual gifts. When I wanted to see, And I missed the experience because I wasn't embracing what I am, which is I'm a feeler. So it was a double lesson that day, and one that really has gotten my attention all of my life. Like, be grateful for what gifts you do have, because somebody else wants those. So take those as gratitude and appreciation. Be grateful for them every day. And don't waste your energy and your time wanting for something that can't, I can't make myself 5'10". Well, I can wear some high heels. Right? But you can't change your eye. Well, I guess you can put contacts in. Like, just embrace who your natural being is. And when you recognize that beauty within yourself, the ripple effect of that is that energy of unconditional love comes through, the feeling of knowing who you are, your value, your worth, all of those things live there. So Michael taught me one of the greatest lessons and experiences, and how to manage and maintain your energy, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Jamie, yep.
So, okay, awesome. Very cool. I get very confused because, much like you, I suspect, so you say you're a feeler as your primary, but you were also seeing, the darting and the dashing of the beings from room to room, or right? So it gets confusing. So how can you, or we as an audience, tell what the primary
quality is? So basically, there are more qualities than just the four that I talk about. I'm just trying to simplify them, because there's actually clairgustance, and there's clairfragrance, and there's clairalience, and there's clairempathy now also. So those are kind of all the different areas. The way to know what your natural strongest attribute is, because yes, we all have all of them. So if you've done some work or developed some of them, then you're going to have 2 or 3 that are more active. And yes, the experience I had with my angel and some of the experiences I had after were visual, but my nature, I've been a feeler since I was a kid. I could sit next to my uncle and at a party, and my knee would throb. And then I'd say my knee's throbbing. And then the next day or 2 days later, my mom would say, oh, Uncle Jack's going into surgery for knee surgery. That's why I was feeling that. Like, I knew I was feeling things that weren't mine, right? I've always been that way. And so the clairsentient, and it's also the one that you reject. The one believe it or not, there are people that don't want to be visual. They don't want to see. They're scared to see. So they reject the visual, and they'd rather feel, or they'd rather know, or and then there's some of us that are claircognizant. So claircognizance is the knowing. And it's like, well, that one's so hard to tell because I got all these other thoughts in my head. So how do I know if this is actually a knowing or if it's just something I'm thinking, right? Because then we're practicing discernment. I'm teaching this right now. I have an intuition group. I have a full year intuition group. And this is one of the things I'm teaching right now about is how to discern the difference, because it's not as simple as we like to think it is. And most of the time, the way we think it is, it's the opposite. We think my head is saying something and my heart's saying something else. I'm like, oh, baby, it's the other way around, right? So often, the one that we push against, that's the one generally. And if you are a clairsentient or clairempath, which clairsentient is I feel like I feel in my body, or I get gut feelings, where clairempath is I absorb energy of other people. They didn't used to ever separate them. They all came under kind of one pile. But more recently, they've started to kind of identify that clairempathy is different. And it is different because clairempathy is I'm feeling your pain. I'm feeling your emotions, your sadness, your grief, your blah, blah, blah. Whereas clairsentient is I'm actually having the physical experience of sensations. Like I got a gut feeling. I have a sense. I've got the goosebumps on my arms. Or I have the physical pain in the body. So that's kind of the way to discern the two. But that's how you would discover that. So Michael, so the thing I want you to hear about Michael is that Michael's energy, what I've learned since, so, we grow and we evolve and the message never changes, but sometimes it does go deeper. And what I've learned more recently, the last 15 years or so, is that instead of the energy, I think that we use the word protection a lot, especially in our circles. And what Michael has said to me is, it's actually not really about protection. It's about maintaining, it's about maintenance of your own energy. Instead of protecting and trying to keep people away, people's energy out of your field, you can't control other people. And we all know that's true because we've all tried. So you can't control other people or their energy. But what you do have control over is your energy, your frequency. So when I call in Archangel Michael and I ask him, and I do this every morning to this day still, 38 years later, when I call in Archangel Michael, what I'm asking him to do is to help me to manage and maintain my energy so that I don't absorb the energy of others. It puts it into my responsibility instead of putting it into blame. And where do I want my power? I always want my power with me. I don't want my power over there in that person. I want my power with me. So when we're calling on Michael, he's helping us to manage and maintain our own energy, vibration, frequency, so we don't absorb the energy, absorb the heaviness, the weight of the world, the pain, the anger, the fear, so we don't take that on. That's the difference. Because when you think about protection, even just the word, it's a fear base. There's a fear base to protection. Whereas I'm talking about holding my own energy, it's not fear. That's strength. That's a love energy. So when you just look at that, and again, some people might say, well, it's just semantics, Sunny. There's frequency behind words. And so when we tune into that frequency, we're actually putting the energy out of that frequency. So if we start looking at it as I'm maintaining my own energy and I'm asking Michael to help support me in that maintenance, well, that is a completely different, that's empowering versus I'm asking Michael to help protect me from all those people out there. That sets up more fear.
I have a question, Sunny.
Sure.
What, so I know like there's been times where I would pray protection over my home. So if we're calling in Archangel Michael to help maintain our own energetic boundaries, would we ask, I mean, if we're doing it in ourselves, does it naturally expand to our space, or do we have to clarify the space, or
it's intention? It's intention. So, I mean, if it's important for you to state the words and you can say to manage and maintain the energy within as well as around, like surrounding me, you could do that for sure. I think it depends on what your comfort level is. Like for me, I feel like my environment, I'm safe. I know I'm safe. It's like I've called in Michael for so many years, like he's standing beside me. I do it every morning, not because I don't think that he's there, but I do it as part of my spiritual practice so that I am intentional and present to that energy every single day.
Yes.
Okay. So that's why I do it. So if it feels important to, maintain the space in my environment, or, like sometimes when my kids are driving, like if they're driving far away, I'll do it's not that I do it all the time because I don't know where they are all the time, but sometimes like when they're coming from Utah or whatever, I'll say, okay, Michael, will you please surround them just in light and help support them in holding their energy so they can manage their own frequency and vibration. So sometimes I will do that, but is it necessary to do it with everything that we're in or around? No, but if it feels necessary for you, it's necessary.
Okay.
If it doesn't, then it's not. But I do think that it's important to have a spiritual practice that it's like our meditation. I meditate every morning. It's not because I don't think I all of a sudden got separated at some point, because I know I'm all connected, but I do that as my acknowledgement of my physical being connecting to the spirit within me so that my spirit can guide instead of the humanness of some Sunny, because the humanness of Sunny, she's great and she's fun, but she's not the one I want guiding this train. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was a great question, Erin. Thank you for that. So that's the difference between Michael. Now let's just talk about, I'm going to see, because I don't have time for all of them. Let's talk about Uriel. Because I actually use Archangel Uriel quite a bit in my life. And Uriel really is helpful in hard things, big things, difficult things. So Uriel vibrates to the color red. And Uriel's energy is about seeing the bigger picture, about the vision. And Uriel helps us to really stay grounded and stay present to the purpose greater than what we can see in the humanness of where we're at. So I've had a variety of experiences with Uriel over the years, but if I think about the one that stands out the most, it was one of the situations where I was in one of the most painful places in my life. And that was a friend of mine, my husband's best friend, who took his own life. And they were best friends, and our his oldest son and our youngest son were best friends. And so we were close to the family and close to him. And they had actually just moved to be closer to us so that the kids could spend more time together, just a couple of weeks before this. And when we got the call from his girlfriend, and she just kept saying, his name was Mike. She just kept saying, Mike's gone, Mike's gone, Mike's gone. We're like, whoa, where'd he go? Do we need to go find him? Like that was until we could get out that no, he had shot himself. And so we drove in the, it was 11 o'clock or so at night, and we drove to her house immediately. And in that mile drive, my immediate guidance was Uriel and Michael. Michael to help me manage my energy, because I knew I'm a sensitive and I'm going into a very volatile experience right now where people are going to be in devastation. And Uriel, because suicide is so hard to understand on a human level. It's easy to understand that people get desperate. It's easy to do that, but it's hard to understand how they go through that, especially when they have 3 children and, those types of things. And I knew that my human mind was not going to be able to get to a place of understanding. And so I needed to have a higher perspective. And so so the whole time, which wasn't very long, I'm calling in Michael and Uriel, and I could literally felt the presence of each one of them as I got out of the car that night. And when I got there and we saw his girlfriend and his parents had just gotten there as well, it was the 5 of us. There was a voice that said to me, there is a greater good you cannot see. And I was like, you're damn right. Can't see that. I'm struggling right now to see that. But I held on to that. That was a message. I knew it was a message. I held on because I needed something, and that was the something. And that night was horrific. And the next morning, of course, we didn't sleep. My husband woke up. My husband is an ex-Marine, and my husband woke up, and he's not a crier ever. He's one of those guys that doesn't have any emotion externally, right? And he couldn't what he would say, pull himself together. And once we woke up, we both felt, and my husband isn't into this stuff, but we both felt a sense of needing to go to the house. And the message that I heard was we needed to clean and clear the house. The message my husband heard was he needed to clean up. And so our friend shot himself in the head in the bathroom. And if you've ever experienced anything like that, you have to hire a company to come and clean the remnants of the bodies. And we couldn't find a company at the time that could come that day. And we really wanted to do it. We felt very strongly guided to do it ourselves. And so my husband and I went into that home and we cleaned his space and his body and the parts of his body, I should say. And I cleared the space. And as I did this, Uriel's presence was there in such a strong, profound way. It was amazing to me, and Michael's as well. There's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger picture here. And as we did this clean and clear for several hours, after we were done, my husband left for a little while because he was tapped out. And I stayed in the space and I did some meditation and I cleared the whole space. And the energy felt sacred. It didn't feel like where a death in that terrible way had happened. And his girlfriend called me, who was living at my house now. She'd stayed at my house the night before, and she was planning on staying there for a while until she figured out what she was going to do, because she said, I'll never go to that house again. Understandable. And I said, you know what? I think you're going to feel different. Will you just come over here? And she goes, Sonny, I can't. And I said, I understand, but I think one day you will. And if you can just trust me, I truly believe that you're actually meant to be here, and you will feel a sacredness and a connection to him that you won't feel any other way. And she came over that night, and she lived in that house for 2 more years by herself. It was remarkable. And it was Uriel's presence giving me the presence of mind to say, okay, there's value in this. There's value in this, because I couldn't see it. And it took a lot of effort to find that when I would look at those little boys. But now, 10 years later, it's been 10 years. One of the values was I had a client take their life the next year on the same day. And I had a friend lose their life 2 years earlier also by suicide. And part of the value is I know how to walk through that. I don't like it. I don't want to be the one, but I know how. And one of the other values is that he was drinking a lot, and he was losing himself to drugs and alcohol. And most of that people didn't know. And he has been a better guide for his children. And I know this is hard to hear. He has been a better guide for his children in spirit, pure energy, than he could be in his human body. And that he told me that a week later, a week after his death, he told me that is why, but I had a hard time believing it. And now that I've lived 10 years, absolutely true. So Uriel can help us when we can't wrap our heads around something, to be able to see that greater picture that helps you to just move on. It helps you to take the next step, or to get out of bed, or to do the thing the next day. And Uriel's helped me in a lot of those more difficult situations, those ones that you say, I don't want to do this, and y'all know what those are. Those situations when you call in Uriel and say, okay, I don't want to do this, but I know I can, and I need your help. Then that knowing of whether it's images that come to you. I would see his older son, who was like another son to me. I would see him in years down the road, what he would look like, and that he would be happy and smiling. And I couldn't imagine that at this time, because there were no smiles. And he's a well-adjusted, intelligent, smart, great kid. And, some people say, I wish Mike was here to see this. Oh, Mike sees this. Mike sees it more than we do. So Uriel can help in those big picture, painful things, and also reminds us to trust that vision, trust that highest good, know that things are happening in divine perfect order. And that when you're connecting with your angels, guys, a lot of things don't make sense in this human world, and intuition rarely makes sense. You know, if you're trying to tell between your intuition and a message or a sign, your intuition is usually the one that doesn't make sense. That's pretty darn common. I know it sounds unusual, but that's usually the thing that doesn't make sense is your intuition. But if you start connecting with your angels, you open up, you tap in, you tune in, you ask for help, you ask, allow, believe, and receive. They'll be there for you. They'll be there for you.
It's so true. Thanks for making me cry, Sunny.
You know, it's part of my gift.
You know what? It is part of the gift it does invoke those emotions and those deep-seated, just the feels and the ripple effect are both running themes in my life right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
Get it. Absolutely amazing, completely fantastic. You are my hero. Thank you for being here today, Sunny Dawn Johnston.
Thank you, darling. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate you all being with me, and I'll see you down the road next time.
See you down the road. If you guys would like, thank you, Sunny. You are welcome to get back to your own stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna go switch hats. Well, I'm actually still doing angels, but I'll just put a different hat on.
I love it. I love it.
Guys.
Thank you for being here. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, friends. Have a good one.
All right. So for those of you who are still here, who are live with us on Facebook and or here in the Zoom room, thank you so much for being here. As you can tell, Sunny is straight from the heart. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with her. And she and I have been connected since 2006 or 7. And I don't think I've had a conversation with her where I don't feel like I'm talking soul to soul with somebody. And when I say soul to soul, like the meat suit of the human body that I am in is not even present in the moment when I'm speaking with her. She just has this way of showing up that is so I want to be her when I grow up kind of thing. Like I feel like, she is so authentic, so straightforward, so of love and light and empowerment. And I'm just in awe of her every time I hear her. So I'm so grateful that she was there for us today. Thank you very much for being here. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of these. I'm here as a speaker because of Sunny's teachings. Yeah, having a bawling moment too. Me too. Suicide hits very, very close to home for me. I know that my soul has been there, done that from the perspective of having followed through with suicide in a past life, thank goodness. I know that it feels real to me sometimes here when I get in those deep, dark, scary moments of not seeing the way out of where I am in that moment. So yeah, suicide. Now I know, Uriel. I actually, yeah, I'll get to it when I do. So I'm going to do a presentation on relationship resilience on Sunday morning. So if you're interested in my story around that, definitely show up to that, because I know you will be able to relate to, or I'll be able to relate this story and this experience here with Sunny today. And Bagheera definitely wanted to be as close as she could be energetically to everything Sunny was saying, which always cracks me up. Did you see me put her on her, like behind me, like twice now I've tried to put it and she keeps coming back. So she just wanted to be right here in the midst of it. And I can't say I blame her, to be honest. But anyway, I'll be able to bridge Sunny's presentation to my presentation on relationship resilience, not from the archangel perspective, but from my experience and how how to come out of places where it feels really dark and lonely and you don't know what to do or who to turn to in those situations often. And our system, at least here in the United States, for mental health is broken. It is so effed up, I can't even begin to. So this is one of my goals, one of my many really big, crazy, wild goals, that someday I am going to, someday soon, I'm going to put that out there, going to help shift the energy around the mental health care industry here in America, because it's so broken. And I have a feeling it's broken all around the world. So we need to get on that. So come on, light workers. You got to get rich.
I was just going to volunteer to be on that team. So if you need some help on that team.
Awesome. Awesome. I absolutely love it. I'm willing to take all of the volunteers for that. It's such an important thing to me. Been there, done that. Currently going through it, to be honest with you, not for myself, but for somebody close in my family. And the mental health care industry fucking sucks. Excuse my language, but it really, really does. And so on that note, I do want to invite you guys back at 1:50. Well, maybe we're not even invited back. Maybe just take a 15-minute break from, it's 3 o'clock here in California. At 3:15, Miss Erin Christine is going to present something around embracing this new year and hopefully shift us a little bit away from this. Well, no.
Yes, it's actually
even...
it's a perfect segue. I was sitting here and I was like, I feel like I need to go and kind of get myself prepared, but I'm like, no, it's all going to be good. We're going to bring it in together.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? We're not even going to shift. This is fantastic energy. It's amazing. Let's see, I'm reading, sorry, I got distracted, squirrel, by the comments. Go ahead and stop recording. Thank you, love. We're going to stop recording now. If you are not, before I stop recording, if you're not registered already to be in the Zoom room, you guys want to be in the Zoom room. I don't know what it is about the difference between being live on Facebook and being in the Zoom room, but the energy in the Zoom room is way different. So if anybody else feels that, definitely let me or confirm that for everybody. But yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now.